Death would make anyone upset. This world is a strange one. Have you seen the film The Grudge? It is easily one of my favorite scary movies. It shows what might happen when a person dies angry. And sadly, emotional deaths happen every day. I mean, who wouldn't be upset about dying? It's tragic. It can be unexpected, and often it can be painful. The following 7 allegedly true stories feature angry spirits taking a variety of forms that want nothing more than to torment the living. So, turn up the volume, and let's hope one of these spirits isn't stalking your home. If you want to hear your own story in a video, we are looking for Twitter scary stories, so be sure to send us yours at darknessprevails.org/submit. Now, onto the nightmares. Number 1. The Doll. Submitted by Helios. When my sister was 9 and I was 8, she had this doll that would walk if you held its hand. It stood almost 3 feet high, just a bit shorter than a child the age that would play with the doll. Well, a few months passed and all was fine after she was gifted it. Then our family went to the beach like we did most summer weekends. When we got home, we washed the sand off of our bodies in the front yard with the hose. While outside, I looked up into my sister's window on the 2nd story, and a person was standing in the window. I yelled and my sister and mom saw it too. It looked like a tall man and made of pure darkness, and they looked to be wearing a cowboy hat. My mom went to get the neighbor, Terry, and she got a shotgun and went and searched every inch of the house, even the attic and under the house, but nothing was there. 2 days later, we noticed something very disturbing on the wall behind the doll, at the exact height the doll could reach up onto the wall. There were 3 long, equally placed fingernail scratches the size of the doll's fingers. What really grabbed our attention, though, was when we heard the echoed voice of a little girl saying, "Come play with me." After that, weird stuff started happening. Nightmares, dark figures, the voice that we heard before echoing throughout the house, and the sound of the little girl's laughter. The laughter would always be the same, except for the pitch. Sometimes it would be low, demonically so. Oftentimes we would find the doll where we didn't leave it, as if it had moved across the room. I had never placed the doll myself in my room, yet sometimes we would find it there, waiting. Every person that stayed the night had an experience. None of our friends, not even our parents' friends, would ever stay after dark. A few years later, we sold the house, but the story keeps going. My mom has kept in touch with the buyers. I remember the guy named Bob who came over 6 to 7 months after buying the house. He came over to our new place and he asked my parents, did we ever experience paranormal things, because his wife Marie started hearing voices and seeing weird things. He had admitted her to a mental ward to get help, but a month or so later, he started hearing and seeing the same things. And that's when he came by our place to ask us questions. Eventually, he got 2 priests to come by and clear the house. Every so often we drove by the house, and I know over the next decade, it was up for sale 7 times. The weird part is, my dad and grandfather built that house with their bare hands, and we do not believe the doll was the cause, but more so, perhaps, the land. It had been an old plantation land, in a city with a very long, troubled history. All across our little city are tales of hauntings small and large. This experience changed our family not for the better, but for the worse. To this day, we speak about the events only in a hushed whisper, hoping that nothing ever happens again. Number 2. Interesting Ouija Board and Spirit Box Session. Submitted by A Person 1300. I am a teenager, and I'll try not to make this story too long, but I can't promise anything. I've always been into the paranormal. It's just something I've always been interested in. I'm also Wiccan because of my mother. Me and my friend, let's call her Kat, wanted to have a sleepover. It was getting closer towards the end of summer, and we wanted to hang out again before school started. We did end up having one, but it wasn't something that I'd ever imagined to happen. Basically, she came over and we watched a few videos. We were watching YouTube to be specific. The first weird thing that happened was that everyone in the house heard a big banging sound, which startled everyone in the household, even me. We found out our neighbors shot off a firework or something like that, but the weird part was that it wasn't even aiming near our house, and the thing didn't fall sideways in our house's direction. All in all, it wasn't even close to us, so that was a little odd. The next thing is something that I didn't believe at first. Kat and myself were just watching more videos. They were paranormal videos because we were planning on playing with the Ouija board, and we wanted to study up into it. Suddenly, my door opened. I thought it was my mother checking in on us, but no one was there when the door was opened. So that freaked out my friend Kat a little bit, saying that it must have been something in my house. But I reassured her it must have been a draft, even though I knew we've never had drafts in our house before. The final experience was right before we were going to play with the Ouija board. I have a hot tub in my house, and we have a pool as well. So first, we went into the hot tub, and after a little bit, we went into the pool and were acting like idiots, just splashing each other and all that jazz. We started to get chilly, so we went back to the hot tub. However, as soon as we stepped back inside, all the torches that were set up by my back porch went out, and there was no reason as to why it happened. There wasn't any strong winds or anything like that. Of course, we ran inside, obviously freaked out and on edge. Still though, I wanted to do the Ouija board session. The board was made up by the two of us, me cutting it out and her drawing the letters and numbers on the board. To be honest, I don't have the best handwriting. After that, I got a shot glass for us to use as the planchette. We were going to light up some candles, but the lighter I had went missing and I couldn't find it. In the end, we didn't have any candles to light. At first, when we asked if anyone was there, we didn't really get a response, so I was kind of sad about that. But slowly it began to move, and of course I thought Kat was doing it, but she swore to me she wasn't. I knew I wasn't moving it because my finger was just barely on top of the shot glass. We decided to say goodbye to the spirit, because it wasn't really doing that much, which some would think is dumb, but I have to agree with them, because it was a stupid thing to do in the first place. We weren't trying to mess around with anything. We knew the dangers of asking certain questions and what the signs of a spirit trying to escape the board were, so we were totally serious about all of this. After a while, we decided to start a new session, and this time we got a pretty good response. We asked who it was, and he spelled out the name Ron. Later we found out that his full name was Ronnie. Ron was his nickname. He said he was a good spirit, and that he died at the age of 15. We asked what he looked like, and he said that he had blonde hair and either gray or green eyes. I can't remember what. At that moment, I felt cold in certain places, and it was hot outside, and there was no wind from a fan or any draft inside my room. But it didn't give me bad vibes at first. I was beginning to get a little suspicious, so I tested Ron to see if he knew the answer to the questions that I was asking. I was suspicious that Kat was still moving it. In the end, he got all the answers correct, which made me confirm that this was the real deal. I really wanted to get the videotape, but I didn't want to leave the board, and I did not want to anger Ron, so I ended up asking if I could, and he said no. My friend Kat was aware that I've had weird experiences before. One time I felt weight on the edge of my bed as if someone was sitting there, but I was the only one in my room that day. I had also felt people's hands on me at night, though there was no one in my room, and apparently it had been Ron doing it. I was beginning to have back pains, which made me want to end the session and go to sleep. Kat didn't want to, and Ron didn't want to end it either. And suddenly I felt a coldness all over my back, as if he was trying to make the pain go away. It worked, but I was still shocked and creeped out by it. Finally, I was done. I was worn out and I was ready to say goodbye. I put the board in my closet and we went off to bed. Before we went to sleep, Kat told me that she wanted to do it again in the morning, so I agreed with her, but I sort of wished that I didn't. Morning came and I was the first one up, but Kat didn't take too long before she was up too. We got the board out and began to play. This time we did not get Ron, but another spirit. It was a female apparently, but it told us its name was John, which was confusing because that's usually a guy's name. She said she died when she was 47 years old, and I didn't like her at all. I felt like something was hurting my hand while we were playing. I'll describe it as best as I can. You know the fat below your thumb on the inside of your palm? It felt like someone was digging their nails into that part of my skin, despite nothing being there. I kept telling Kat that we should end the session. I wouldn't say why either, I just wanted to stop. So she listened to me and we finally said goodbye. I explained what happened and she got a little nervous, but what happened next was even creepier. Something was holding on to Kat's arm and she couldn't move it no matter how hard she tried. I literally had to yank her arm back and we were both definitely done at that point. A few days passed after that, and I finally decided to tell my mother that we had played with the Ouija board. She scolded me, but she wasn't too mad. In the end, I threw the board away, and I hoped that all of this would be done. But it wasn't. One day, I didn't go into my room immediately like I usually do. I was playing with our cat. Finally, I went to my room, and right on my bed, facing upward, was the board that I threw away the other night. I yelled for my mom and showed it to her. She swore that it wasn't her, and I asked my sister. She said the same thing. Again, I threw it away, and this time it was gone for good. Now, this was recent. It literally happened a weekend ago. I was having another sleepover with Kat. This time we decided to do a spirit box, and holy crap did we get a response. Something said my name, and I never noticed until I listened to a recording on my phone. I was scared to death, especially considering that it called me by a nickname that an old friend used to call me. I've never gotten bad vibes in my house before, and no one's ever died in my house that I know of. So how all of this is happening is something I don't know. But I do know that I might find some answers in the future. I'll just have to wait and see. Number 3. Angel or Demon, submitted by Luciano V. I have always seen and felt spirits. I was about 3 when this started. Also, since birth, I've had an imaginary friend named Amber. Amber was mischievous and jealous. She is like the older sister who is more childish than you. My grandmother swears that for as long as she can remember after learning that my mom was pregnant with me, there was a little blonde girl behind her, and then me after I was born. She said that she never got a good look at her face. That is, until the day I almost died from a fever. She claims that the little girl had an evil-looking smirk on her face. However, this is the clearest memory I have from my life then. I saw her face and she had a smile. Yes, however, it wasn't evil to me. It was as if to say, it's all going to be okay. That's all I remember up until I was 3. I remember being put in timeout for whatever reason. I was sitting there talking to Amber and playing games. I was allowed to get up and went into the kitchen to play with my toy cars, and I heard a child that wasn't Amber. I know this because this one was a male. It said, "I will have you," and I simply rolled my eyes and went back to playing with Amber. To this day, there have been things going on and children speaking to me the same way. Occasionally, they try to harm me. Amber is still around and just kind of shoos them away. I say child and children like that because they seemed more like grown adults that were trying to speak to small children, but they have been smoking from a young age. Number 4. Charlie Charlie, submitted by Gamer Girl. I was 10 when this happened, and it happened at my school. I was at lunch recess with my friends Andrew, Loralee, and Melissa. We were getting bored, and we did not know what to do. So I asked them if they'd ever heard of the game Charlie Charlie. They said they did. I asked if they wanted to play, and they agreed. So I went inside and got a piece of paper and 2 sharpened pencils. When I got outside, I drew a big cross on the paper and wrote yes on the upper left corner, no on the upper right, yes on the bottom right corner, and no on the bottom left corner. And we made sure it wasn't windy. Thankfully it wasn't, but it was really hot that day. We walked on over to the shade and balanced 2 pencils on the paper. I couldn't do it, so I told Andrew to do it. He struggled a little bit, then finally balanced the pencils. We stood up and walked far away from the piece of paper, far enough that no one could blow on it. Then Andrew said, "Charlie, Charlie, are you here?" The pencils did not move, so we tried again. "Charlie, Charlie, are you here?" The pencil still didn't move. We tried one more time. Then one of the pencils moved to yes. We kind of freaked out. I don't think any of us expected anything to happen. Andrew continued though. "Charlie, Charlie, are you going to kill me?" It once more moved to yes. At this point, we were all ecstatic and frightened, but we wanted more. So the next time recess rolled around, we played Charlie Charlie again. This time, a lot of other kids crowded up around the paper. There were a lot of kids asking questions, screaming in excitement and fear, watching the pencils move, watching as Charlie said that they were going to kill someone. And what was really weird was that over the next few weeks, Andrew was in the hospital. He was really sick. Luckily, he got better, but we were all a little hesitant to play Charlie Charlie again after that. Number 5. Condo Ghost, submitted by Isabella K. It was June 4th when this all started. My mom, my dad, one of my mom's friends, and I had just moved into a new house. This house was a condo. The way this condo was set up was our rooms were on the bottom floor, and there were rooms above us. The first night there, we heard loud sounds. It sounded like chairs being dragged across the floor. At first, we didn't think much of it, because my parents are really big skeptics, and honestly, I am too. The second night, it happened again, so I started to keep track of how it happened and what time it happened. A week went by, and it was happening every night at the same time, 3 in the morning. I thought this was a little weird. I had heard that this was the witching hour. I was a bit spooked by it. A month goes by, and my mom gets in a fight with her friend, so we had to find a new place. Eventually, we did, and as we were moving, my mom said to me, "Me and your dad did not want to tell you this, but the chair noises upstairs annoyed me and your dad so much. We talked to the landlord and had him check up there. He said that there was no one living up there and that there was no furniture to be moved, but that there had been a suicide there a few years back." This stuck with me and still haunts me to this day. Number 6. I looked a ghost in the eye. Submitted by William R. When I was about 7 years old, me, my mom, dad, older sister Laura, and older brother Steven moved into a 2-story suburban house. We came from an apartment that was getting too small for us. Anyways, during the first 2 weeks of trying to sleep in my room in our new home, there were some nights when I would see the hallway light come on, because I could see the light shine through the cracks of my door, creating a rectangular glow. I wouldn't hear the click of the light switch come on, nor would I hear any doors open. This would happen at late hours in the night, almost every night between 12 and 4 in the morning. And to make things worse, I would also hear footsteps in the hallway. I tried not to think too much into it. I thought maybe someone got up to use the restroom or to get a glass of water, something. And sometimes that was true. I would hear someone in the bathroom, or I would hear someone go downstairs and open and close the fridge door. However, on a couple of nights, the hall light would stay off, but I would still hear those footsteps, and on a few occasions in the night, it sounded like whoever or whatever it was pacing back and forth, up and down the hallway, and frighteningly, I heard whoever or whatever this was stop right outside my door a couple of times. I held my breath and tensed up a bit, listening very closely, but I could not hear any breathing outside my door. Eventually, I'd hear it step back from my door and continue to walk around the hallway outside my door again. I suppose it could have been my brother or sister, but it just didn't feel like it was. This presence didn't feel like anyone from my family, and it did not sound like they're walking. I know that sounds strange, but these footsteps were clear and had an almost heavy thud to them. So the next morning, I separately asked each person in my family if they ever woke up last night, or were at least in the hallway. Most responded with a, "What are you talking about?" followed by a, "No, I slept all night and I never got up." I told them that I had heard footsteps in the hallway, and I saw the light come on, but none of them heard any footsteps or noticed the light themselves, and so they just brushed it off. Just saying like, that's strange that you experienced that. Fast forward several years later, I'm about 16 years old, in high school, living in the same house, listening to some violent music while home alone. Through the music, I hear a thud that sounded like something hitting the hallway wall. It sounded like it came from outside my room, to the left, that leads down the staircase. I poked my head out of the doorway, assuming it was one of my cats or my dog playing around. But instead of seeing a pet or nothing at all, I see a very tall, 7-foot maybe larger dark figure. It's very thin, and it's staring right at me. The upper half of its body was sticking out from behind the corner from the top of my staircase. I stood frozen, and we just glared at one another. Finally, this thing moved very rapidly out of view down the stairs. Oddly enough, there were no stomping or stepping sounds like a person would normally make if they ran downstairs. I gasped audibly, slammed my door, and turned off the music. I stood inside my room next to my door listening and petrified. I grabbed a knife in my room and just waited in there listening but hearing nothing but absolute silence. I knew my brother was coming home soon, so I just waited in my room, knife in hand, until he finally arrived 20 minutes later. Then and only then did I leave my room. 1 year later, my sister Laura and I were still attending the same high school, and on this day the school had a minimum day schedule where the school lets the students go home early at around noon. My sister Laura brought her friend Kate with us to our house because we knew nobody would be home and we'd have the house to ourselves. I had a thing for Kate. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was and still is an attractive girl, and now woman. The three of us were just hanging out on the couch together, talking and watching TV. Kate recently moved into a new house closer to us in town. She was explaining to my sister and I how she thought her house was creepy and haunted, and that she felt like whatever was haunting it followed her outside of her house too. Laura and I took turns explaining strange things that we'd experienced as well. While on these topics, we all started to get creeped out, even though it was bright outside and in the middle of a nice sunny day. Kate started to look visibly upset because her eyes began to water. She then said, "We should go somewhere." Right after Kate said that, my sister asked in a panicked tone, "Do you guys hear that?" I muted the TV, and in fear, we all listened quietly. It was just a few seconds of total silence. Then suddenly we heard step, step, step upstairs, like someone was walking around up there. We all looked at each other with wide eyes and with fear clearly seen on each other's faces, mixed with the look of what the heck are we going to do now? Laura and I always keep the doors locked, so we were pretty confident nobody should be up there. We all stand up and walk to the kitchen, grabbing knives. We start to head upstairs. There is nothing but silence though. We keep going, trying to be as quiet as possible, but occasionally whispering about how scary this is. I was in front because I felt being the only male I may have an advantage if I had to encounter someone. Plus, I wanted to impress Kate by showing her that I wasn't scared, even though I thought my heart was going to burst. We began to check every room, and I was ready to stab someone as I began to look in closets and under beds, anywhere someone could hide, with my sister and Kate following me. We start with the rooms closest to the top of the stairs, and we make our way toward the rooms at the end of the hallway. I felt adrenaline flowing in my veins, more than I've ever felt in my life, because now there are only 2 rooms left to search, both at the end of the hall. These rooms are across from one another. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I decided to check the room on the left first, as the door was already slightly open, and the door on the right was closed. While the girls watched the door on the right side, I walked into the room, but I saw nothing. So I guessed it was time to search the final room on the right, which had its door closed. I was pretty confident that there was nobody in the other rooms we just searched, and if someone or something was in my house, this was going to be the room they were hiding in. I paused for a second outside the room with my heart continuing to pound away in my chest. I could hear my heart palpitating in my eardrums, and there was sweat dripping down my forehead. I paused outside the door for a while, thinking of the possible life and death fight that might occur when I opened the last door. Finally, I grabbed the door handle, twist it slowly, then swing the door open as fast as I could, knife held tightly in my hand, expecting a fight. The room was empty. But there was a closet in there too, and its door was closed as well. Still in fight mode, I paused a second outside the closet door, trying to regain control of my breathing. While making sure I got a good grip on my knife, I slowly reached for the closet handle, then opened the door quickly and violently, knife ready still. But again, nothing was in there. The closet was empty. We checked under the bed, and still nothing. There was no one in the room. With the 3 of us cursing and trying to calm down, we make our way back downstairs. We put the knives away and sit back down on the couch. I unmute the TV, and we begin to talk and relax again. But this break was short-lived, because about 2 minutes later, we hear the footsteps again. This time the stomp was louder, coming from the upstairs. These steps sounded deliberate, and were clearly heard, as if whatever it was wanted us to hear it walking. I mute the TV again, and this time, I yell towards the direction of the stairs, angrily. "Hello? Who is it? I've got a knife." Then there was silence again, and at that moment, Kate started tearing up. She's obviously upset and on the verge of crying. Laura and I ask, "Are you feeling all right?" She responds, "No, I feel sick, guys. I want to go home." Right after she says this, she quickly looks to her right, which is where the kitchen is. When she does this, my sister and I also look in the same direction, and we all nearly jump out of our skins as we clearly see an older woman standing there. My eyes are beginning to tear up, and I'm getting goosebumps as I'm thinking about it again. I only saw her for about 2 seconds, maybe 3, but it felt like much longer. She drifted backwards out of view like she was walking into the living room and sort of faded away. We froze, and after a few moments, my sister says out loud, "Hello?" No response. We get up to go and look into the living room, and once again there's nobody, nothing, and there's no place to hide in that room. I remember a lot of details about her appearance, even though I saw her briefly. The appearance of this woman in my kitchen happened so quick that when I saw her and then nearly had a heart attack, she was gone. We sat back down, and at this point Kate is now straight crying. I ask, "Can you, tell me what you just saw?" Kate nods and my sister says, "Yes." I say, "Oh my God, this is crazy," followed by a few more "what is happenings?" I know what I saw, and as I was beginning to describe them what the woman looked like, they not only agreed with me, but they even finished a few of my sentences describing the details of this woman's appearance. This woman looked like an ordinary woman in her late 70s or early 80s. She didn't have evil black eyes, she just had brown eyes. She had no exposed bones in her face, no blood or other things like that. She didn't look dead or injured. She was about 5'6" and 180 pounds. She was white, with gray curly hair that was parted down the middle that went down to her neck. She was wearing a fairly large, lightly colored pinkish white t-shirt and jeans. She looked like someone's grandma, basically just hanging out with us. However, I will never forget the look she had on her face. It was the look as if we had just woken her up from bed late at night. She looked extremely angry. Her eyebrows weren't scrunched up, she just had this blank expression on her face, but her mouth was slightly open, and her eyes, she had large glaring eyes as she looked right into my own that expressed nothing but an extreme hatred towards me, as if she was speaking with her eyes to me these words, "I will kill you all." I was more terrified when I saw her than I've ever been. The image of her still burned into my memory to this day. And number 7. Something followed me. Submitted by EverythingDac666. I am a 17-year-old female from the UK, and I was still 17 at the time this story takes place. It all started at some point last spring. I can't quite remember the date, but it was the month of May, a few weeks before I finished my first year of college. It was getting dark out, and we had to get 3 of our little Shetland ponies back home from the grass bank near our home. They get put there every day for grass and brought back at the end of the day. There are 2 lots of trees along the first bit of the grass bank. My siblings and I call them the Little and Big Forest. The big one is on the left, and the small one on the right. I was walking along the top of the bank, which was closer to the big forest. As I was walking along the first bit of the grass bank, I happened to look towards the little forest, and I saw this white figure just hiding in between the trees, looking right at me. I think I was more confused than scared when I saw it. Bear in mind, it was not completely dark outside yet, so I could still see where I was going clearly. I looked away, then looked back, and it was still there, so I knew I wasn't just seeing things. No tricks of the light. I decided to speed walk as I started to feel unsafe. When I looked back to see if it was still there, I saw it had moved along the forest, still staring at me. I knew at that point I was being followed. When I get nervous when walking around at night, I talk to myself or sing to feel less scared. I know it's weird, but it actually helps. I was laughing this time, saying to myself, am I really bothered by something that might not even be there? I grabbed the ponies and started to walk back. As I was walking down the last bit of bank on the road, I thought I would look one more time to see if it was still there. This time, it was running along the tree line, still looking towards me. I let go of 2 of the leads holding the ponies, and 2 ran off home, and I started running with my last pony. I felt like I was in danger. I did look back one more time to see it had stopped at the end of the trees. I kept going until I got home, which was only a few hundred yards away. I shouted at it and told it to go away as I ran down the road. When I got back home, I put the horses away and ran inside. A few days later, after feeling like being watched all the time, I saw it again. Well, I heard it more than I saw it. It was after a boring day at college. A lot of people had finished earlier, but I had finished at 4:30. This is important because most people had left, so one of the commonly used paths to get to the college would be empty. I was walking down this long bit of path away from the college. When I was most of the way down the path, I heard what sounded like someone skipping behind me. I stopped, and so did the noise. But soon, it picked up again. It sounded like someone was walking not too far behind me. They sounded big because the footsteps were very loud. I am a paranoid person, as I had been followed before by people and the paranormal, so I looked behind me, and I saw nothing. No one was on the path near me, just a few people near the start of the path. No one walked into the nearby driveways as they were gravel ones, and I would have at least heard them. So there was no place to hide. I kept walking, and I heard it again. This time much closer, so I turned around really fast to see no one. But those footsteps were still coming towards me. They were getting closer and closer, but nothing was there to make the sounds. I kept turning around again and walking at the same time. At this point, I was practically jogging. I suddenly heard the footsteps get faster as if someone was running towards me, keeping pace. I turned again and still nothing. I was now getting a little confused. I turned back around and was going to run by then. And that's when I felt something grab my shoulder and pull me back. I hear a whisper, "Hush." Then whatever it was did a really low laugh. It sounded demonic, and I felt whatever it was walk right through me. I got a really cold and horrible feeling. I stopped because I honestly had no clue what had just happened. I know some of you will think it might not be the same thing from before, but I felt the same way I did when I saw that thing from the forest. So about 2 weeks later, after this incident, I was home and it was around 10 or 11 at night. I had a bad craving for a glass of cold milk and chocolate chip cookies. I went down the set of stairs that lead to the kitchen to get what I wanted. There are 2 staircases in my house. It used to be a half a house, now a whole one. I went down the stairs that takes me straight to the kitchen. When I walked through the kitchen door, I saw something in the corner of my eye. There is a window to my right. The window looks into part of the back garden, so as I came through the door and noticed the thing in the corner of my eye, I turned a little more to look at it. I did a quick look, like I only looked for 2 seconds, and my heart did a backflip, and I took in so much detail of what I saw in those 2 seconds. This experience was traumatic, so how could I not remember these details? At first I thought it was some clothes hanging outside on the line, but I looked again and nothing was there, and no clothes were on the line. I wish I could forget the face of this thing. It was disgusting. It had black eyes with a white shine to them. It had a broken and deranged smile. Its smile was crooked, like it wasn't on its face correctly. It had brown and piss-yellow teeth. They looked like they had been stuck into his mouth. They were just so uneven. It didn't even have a nose, whatever this thing was. But none of that bothered me. The part that I wish I didn't see was its face. It looked melted. It had all these weird lumps on its face that would pop. This is something I do not ever want to see again for as long as I live. I know it doesn't sound so believable, but this is true. I swear on my life that this is true, and it was the creepiest moment I've ever experienced. I grabbed what I came for and ran back to my room. All night, I had a cold sweat cover me, like when you wake up from a bad dream. Only a few times after that did I just glimpse it, and then I just stopped seeing it altogether. I just want to know what it was, and even more so, what it wanted. Thank you for listening. No one really knows what happens to us after we die, what waits for us beyond, but something can be learned from the stories like these. Death is distressing and almost always unexpected. No matter what lies beyond this life, there must be a reason why these spirits are so angry, so sad. But what could it be? And what horrors await us in the afterlife? Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks, and don't forget to send us your true Twitter scary stories today at darknessprevails.org/submit.